Excelentísimos señores, presidente del Senado.
President of the Spanish Senate, President of the European Committee of Regions, Minister of Territorial Policy and spokesperson for the Spanish government, Minister of Culture, Ambassador of Portugal in Spain, Secretary of State of Territorial Policy, President of the Provincial Deputies Assembly of Badajoz, Secretary Generals for the European Union, and local funding, President of the Spanish Federal Commissioner's Office for the European Presidency. Welcome all. As President of the New Economy Forum, we would like to welcome you to this event, which is sponsored by CISA Health Insurance Company and Solaria Energy Company, both of whose chairmen are with us today. Today we are honored to welcome the President of the European Committee of Regions, Dr. Vasco Cordeiro, and we are very thankful to Isabel Rodriguez Garcia, who is Spanish Minister of Territorial Policy, for having agreed to introduce Mr. Cordeiro. Isabel. Thank you very much. Dear José Luis, just to kick off a cold morning on such a positive note with such wonderful employment figures which show the robustness of our companies is really a privilege because, you know, all these positive figures also indicate that the Spanish population is happier than in the past. Dear President of the Committee of Regions, thank you very much for agreeing to have me. You are going to be addressing a good representation of Spanish society. President of the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, dear José Luis, thank you very much to the organizers. It is an honor to welcome in Madrid the President of the Committee of Regions. I would like to thank him on behalf of the Spanish government for having traveled to Spain precisely at this time, just before the Spanish presidency. Vasco Alves Cordeiro is the voice of regions and cities in the European Union, a European Union which works on the basis of the principle of subsidiarity, that is, the principle of common sense, because the principle of subsidiarity means to make decisions at a government level which best serve the public interest and, whenever possible, as close as possible to the local level. It should be local entities the closest to citizens which should make the most decisions possible. The Committee of Regions is therefore an essential institution for the European project. The Commission has calculated that at least 70% of European legislation has a direct impact on our cities and our regions. For that, the role of the Committee of Regions is indispensable so that the European project is really democratic and so that all the different local interests can be balanced and the norms emerging from them can be backed by society at large. These norms are very important. So the regional perspective, the peripheral point of view is fundamental at the center, and this is something that the Spanish government is well aware of. We have a policy to deconcentrate decisions, to overcome the barrier of distance and the highly complex character of the decisions made in the European Union. Vasco Cordeiro knows what I'm talking about because he was born in the Azores, about 3,000 kilometers away from Brussels. He started as a lawyer, but since a very tender age, he became committed with public service. He was a member of the Assembly of the Autonomous Region of the Azores in 1996. And in 2012, he was elected president of the government of the Azores. After that, he occupied the presidency of the Conference of Maritime Peripheral Regions of Europe, and since then he has defended the interests of his own region and of other ultra-peripheral regions such as the Canary Islands, where he was member, of the Committee of Regions on very many occasions, then he became president of the Committee of Regions. So he is extremely well fitted to occupy this role. As president of the Committee of Regions, he has defended matters which are also very important for us, namely cohesion. He spoke about the club of cohesion's friends, and we are in the same club. We share that position in our government. Without any doubt, cohesion is extremely important. It is one of the central axes that is very close to Spain's heart. More recently, in the last few months, a debate has opened up about the future of cohesion policies. And this is a very timely debate at a time like this, where there's so many uncertainties, but also so many opportunities. We are immersed in the fourth industrial revolution. The war in Ukraine has accelerated the energy transition, which should be green and which should be more sustainable, and which should also strengthen the autonomy of the different countries, and everything should be done as fast as possible. In the history of the European Union, each crisis has represented an opportunity, and without any doubt, today we have many opportunities before us, now more than ever. It is time to reinforce cohesion, which, as I have said, and as President Cordeiro has said, is the real binding force of the European project. Cohesion is not just an engine for unity, but it is also a structuring axis for belonging to the European collective project. Before I leave you with Mr. Cordeiro, I would just like to mention that we have talked with Mr. Cordeiro about the priorities that Spain is going to have during the Spanish presidency. The Spanish Prime Minister from the start has said that all the crises that we are facing in Europe can only be resolved with unity, and Spain, during its presidency, will defend a future that allows us to face up to the huge challenges we are faced with, an inclusive Europe, which includes everybody with no exception. This has been a decade of successive crises, which has left many wounds in European society. So we shouldn't forget the most disadvantaged groups. We're going to promote a reform of European governance so that we are better prepared for a next crisis, also protecting our single market. We would like the Spanish presidency to facilitate agreements in matters as important as the ecological transition, strategic autonomy, and migration and asylum. The Spanish Prime Minister is now visiting different European capitals. He's going to visit 3 countries to discuss these issues, so that the voice of the regions is a united voice, so that when Spain becomes president, we may have also paved the way for a wonderful future. We want the Spanish presidency to be shared by the different autonomous regions. Dear Celso, Minister from La Rioja, we would like the regions to also participate in the Spanish presidency. We're going to organize at least one important meeting in each of the regions. We are collaborating with the regions. We have a wonderful working program, and last summer we already organized a conference on European matters, and we are going to keep working along those lines, working closely with La Rioja and we're going to organize a municipality panel because local policy has always been important. We kept saying that from the local level, we made a huge contribution to the global level, and now this is truer than ever. And perhaps the main responses to the big European or global challenges perhaps reside in the local level, and for example, regarding energy, social policies, cohesion policy. I'm really looking forward to listening to you, dear President. Thank you very much for having come all the way to Spain, and let's keep fighting for a European Union where social cohesion is a very important engine. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Minister, for your introduction. And now we will talk to the President of Regions. Welcome to Spain, Dr. Vasco Cordeiro. The Committee of Regions every year publishes a report on the status of regions and cities. In its last edition, you focus on the economic and social consequences of the Russian war against the Ukraine, the lasting effects of COVID-19, and the necessary recovery, the climate emergency and energy transition, the fight against inequalities, and the future of democracy. Mr. Cordeiro, how should the European Union face up to these challenges? What should be the role of regions and cities, and how will the committee that you preside over articulate that matter?
I'm supposed to speak in English. Dear President of the Senate, dear Minister of Territorial Policy, Minister of Culture and Sports, Sr. Embaixador Mira Gomes, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, it's for me a pleasure to be here, and I would like to start by thanking the President of Nueva Economia Forum for the kind invitation to be here this morning, and to try to share with you some of the ideas about the Committee of the Regions and how the Committee of the Regions sees the future about the European Union. Now, that's a big question. That's a huge question. And I think if I had the answer for that, that would be perfect. The day was already won. But I think what we are facing right now in some of the challenges that you've just mentioned is a defining moment about substance and a defining moment about the way we address these issues. Why about substance? About substance because we cannot miss the strategic importance of some of the choices that in the current framework we have to make. Take it, for example, energy. In the current situation, and especially after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, what we had was a tendency or a temptation to go back to some of the safety that was provided for us with old sources of energy. So this is the defining moment where I think that the substance of addressing this challenge, not moving backwards, but moving forward faster to address the energy transition is one of the examples that I could give where the defining moment we are living right now about substance, about energy in this case. But also a defining moment about procedures, about how we do things. The answer for the current challenges is not isolation, is not the answer for the current challenges is to also move forward in what concerns to cooperation, be it at institutional level, like the European Union, in fact, is a way to cooperate, to promote common interests, to address in a common way common challenges, but not only in this formal way, but also in a bilateral way, in opening ourselves to the cooperation with others. This has not only a meaning at state level, at national level, at European level, this also has a very strong meaning in each one of our communities. The way forward in the current circumstances we are facing is not isolation, is not pretending that we are able to define by ourselves the way we can win these challenges and the way we can address it. The time for this kind of approach has long passed. So it's in trying to answer some of the aspects of your question, the way I would put it is like this. The European Union needs to be stronger, needs to be fairer, and stronger not in the sense where it needs to go beyond, for example, some of the areas, but that's a good discussion to have, that's a good debate to have, to go forward in the areas where it can intervene. But mainly, it needs to be stronger from the baseline, and that means stronger, for example, in democratic terms, to be stronger from the democratic point of view of people recognizing, knowing, and of course, being able to audit in some way, to be a part of the process of decision, and also to be able to participate in the way you assess the results of this participation. There are some, let me put it this way, there are some good initiatives. They go in the right way. The Conference on the Future of Europe, for example, is an example of going in the right way. But also we must have the ability to assess in a very objective and in a very clear way what has gone right, what is working, and what is not working, what we can improve, where is the margin for improvement. This is an exercise that, in some cases, needs to be strengthened.
For each answer, so I was, no se preocupe.
Well, how would you analyze, President, the role of the cohesion policy in connection with the recovery and resilience mechanism? The European Union, is it involving regions and cities deeply enough in the recovery plans and in the distribution of next generation funds? Because in Spain we have the impression that this is not happening.
I think there is, I would not say a misunderstanding, but in some cases people tend, not only people, governments, institutions tend to see cohesion policy as only a support policy, only addressing the needs of regions and cities that, well, they are in a less developed position. That's not true. The cohesion policy we have right now is a cohesion policy that is intended to all regions, and it should be kept this way. We should have cohesion policy this way. And cohesion policy has an economic meaning and an economic impact. Because when you develop regions, cities, when you create the opportunity through structural funds, not only that less developed regions can make their way to the average, but also more developed regions to continue in the process of development, well, you are creating economic opportunities. You are creating market. You are creating people that are able to buy, to invest. And that's why the discussion and the debate sometimes that is put between cohesion policy and mainly in budgetary terms, the net receivers, the net contributors, well, if you count everything, you can see that some of the so-called net contributors are the ones that gain more from the single market, of course. So the relationship between one and the other is, from my point of view, very strong. You cannot have one, namely single market, if you don't have a strong cohesion policy that creates opportunities. And this was one of the facts that when the cohesion policy was created, Jacques Delors had the opportunity to address it's essential for single market to have a strong cohesion policy. So it's not, they are not separate things. They influence each other in the ability that cohesion policy has to foster, to create opportunities for single market, but also in the way that the single market is an opportunity, of course, to social, economic, and territorial cohesion.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. Chairman, we have with us a fellow countryman of yours, the ambassador of Portugal in our country, Dr. João Mira Gomes. I'm going to ask him to have the floor briefly. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. Mr. Chairman, dear Vasco, good morning, everybody. There's a lot of talk about Portuguese soft power, and we invest where it is important to invest. The world is important for Portugal, and that's why we have a Secretary General of the United Nations. But regions are very important for Portugal, and there we have the President of the Committee of Regions and Cities, it's not just regions. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that Vasco Cordeiro is also from the Azores Islands, which are in the middle of the Atlantic, to talk a little about the fact that, well, you mentioned that the answer is not isolation. The answer is not becoming isolated. And when we speak about Europe and about having greater autonomy and being stronger, we can only be stronger if we are opener to the world. There's a lot of talk about how to construct this autonomy, and I think that regions and cities also play a very important role. And that is why I would like to listen to you, and I would like you to tell us what you think the role of regions and cities is. For example, now that we are, if we think about to come closer to Latin America or even Africa, a person who was born in the middle of the Atlantic, and the Azores are just at the center there, at the center of the space that we share with our neighbors from Africa and Latin America. And taking advantage of the fact that I'm the ambassador of Portugal, I would like to, listen to your thoughts about this. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
I think, let me put it this way. Subnational levels of government, including provinces, regions, cities, municipalities, I think they are the key. I am convinced that they are the key to, in most of the cases, make some excellent goals and objectives that are defined at state level to make them happen at people's level. One of the ideas that we are involved right now in the Committee of the Regions is exactly the one to reach out to similar organizations in North America, in Latin America, and other areas of the world. Because it's very important that we can translate into community level the goals, the objectives, the ideas that in some cases are put at national and state level. So the role can be immense, but there is always a but. But one of the issues starts, I think one of the main challenges, let me put it this way, one of the main challenges where we have a margin of improvement, it's at state level. Because I don't think, or I believe, that if states understand the correct opportunity, that it's not a question of parallel diplomacy. No, it's to have the opportunity to put subnational levels of government talking, working, building something with subnational levels of government of other countries, of other regions of the world, of other organizations. And why is this important? Well, it's important, first of all, because I think that the key to make people, to make the common citizen understand or feel the usefulness, the importance, the merit of cooperation among people, of working together, of addressing together common challenges, comes from the work of regions and cities, comes from the work of the level of power that is closer to citizens. But there is a lot of challenges to overcome in this area. The willingness from regions and cities to enter, to embark in this kind of procedures, and some do not feel that this is something that could be an area where they could spend their effort, but also from national level, a clear position that promotes, that asks, that motivates subnational levels of government to enter in this kind of cooperation. But I think the key is there. And we have several examples. We have several examples of what regions and cities can do in a situation where we are addressing challenges that go far beyond the reality of cities and regions. War in Ukraine. The first responders in this case were cities and regions, were the ones that opened buildings, sports halls, opened infrastructure, libraries to welcome refugees. This was something that happened because subnational levels of power were able to make it happen. So I can say, to conclude, there is a lot of potential in exploring that area and exploring that way. Thank you.
Presidente,
Mr. Chairman, regarding what you're saying, the aggression of Russia on the Ukraine has wrought havoc in the world order and has started a war, and which is, terrible. The European Committee of Regions, halfway through last year, launched a European alliance for the reconstruction of Ukraine in response to a call by President Zelensky. And just 7 days after, the Ukraine became a candidate to become a member of the European Union. What is your assessment of the impact of the war on the policies of the European Union and the local entities, and how is it going to impact the construction of Europe? Also, do you think that the European Union is prepared to support Ukraine in its heroic resistance in this war, which may be a long war?
The way I see it is, or the answer to that question is the answer to the question, is the European Union willing to fight to survive? because that is, from my point of view, what is at stake. We are all in war. We are all in war. Ukrainians are paying the highest price. But what is at stake here concerns us all. So sometimes we see it as a solidarity to the Ukraine. No, it's not a question of solidarity to Ukrainians. It's a question of contributing to the common effort of a common war. Because if Ukraine falls, it won't stop here. I am convinced of that. So the question, or the answer to that question, is the same answer to the question, is the European Union willing to fight to survive? I think it should. Whatever it takes, how long it takes. The second part of the question, and also the first question, needs to be addressed establishing clearly the difference between two situations. There is a situation where we have a war and where there is the need to support with everything we can. And the Alliance of Regions and Cities for the Reconstruction of Ukraine has mainly two tasks. First of all, the first one is to promote the cooperation peer-to-peer. So cities with cities, regions with regions. We already have good examples of this work. Cascais, for example, in Portugal, is working to rebuild kindergartens. We have cities in the Czech Republic that provided with trams to cities in Ukraine, buses. So it's happening. But the second goal of the alliance is to stress the importance of local and regional levels of power in the reconstruction of Ukraine. To stress the importance of local and regional democracy in the reconstruction of Ukraine. I had the opportunity, not only the Committee of the Regions had already the opportunity to stress this, but we had the opportunity, I had the opportunity that in Berlin during the G7 conference on the reconstruction of Ukraine to stress this idea. This is also a very important opportunity, and also the work of the Committee of the Regions is about this, that since we have to build again, build back better, make it happen considering the most actual, the most current challenges and the most current perspectives concerning energy, concerning the digital transformation. So this is also a time where we can use this momentous task to build back better. Ukraine is not the only country that is candidate for the European Union. So it's also important that not only towards Ukraine, but to other candidate countries, mainly the Committee of the Regions makes and has projects that we call of capacity building to connect with local and regional authorities from these countries, but also to help them get involved right now as candidate countries in the work, namely of the Committee of the Regions. So we have, for example, what we call the Young Elected Politicians Program, and that is a program that involves young elected people in the functioning of the Committee of the Regions, and we've just decided to extend that to Ukraine and to other candidate countries, to give them the opportunity as observers to local and regional authorities in those countries, to be part in our sessions, to be part in our work. I believe in the work I believe in this kind of work. It can really help. It can really help those institutions to progress in their way to the European Union. There is a third aspect I would like, I know I'm going over my time, I would like to address. It's very important that we keep some rationality in this moment. European Union needs a reform the way it works. It's not a question of saying that we are finding a way to excuse ourselves. No, it needs a reform in the way it works. It's not only the generous idea of expanding the European project and the European Union. We must be aware that the way it is working right now needs to be reformed. Needs to be reformed to be more efficient, needs to be reformed to achieve more easily what it intends. There are some proposals, of course, some ideas that separate some of the aspects, but it's very, very important that we keep in mind that enlarging, welcoming more countries must be hand-to-hand with this idea of improving the way we work.
Mr. President, this year we are holding the 30th anniversary of the single market, one of the largest commercial blocs or trade blocs in the world. From the point of view of the cohesion policy, what can you say about the contribution of the single market to the construction of the European Union, and what challenges are we facing at a time where there's so many geopolitical changes? And another question is, what is still on the to-do list of the single market from the point of view of the Committee of the Regions?
Going from the answer I've just had the opportunity to express to a previous question, from my point of view, one of the challenges that monetary union, that economic development faces in Europe is directly connected to the cohesion policy. And this comes from the idea I have, and I defend, that cohesion policy is an opportunity to improve the economic performance of regions. And that means investing, that means consuming, that means developing our economy. Why I think there is a challenge? Very simply. If we look at the last debate about the multi-annual financial framework for this period, 2021-2027, we can see that not everybody thinks that there is still a place for cohesion policy, that there is still a place for, from my point of view, one of the policies that directly touches the core of the European project. So if we put in danger the way that this policy can help regions to achieve economic convergence, to achieve economic development, sooner or later we will be affecting the economic expression of our union, either it be from the economic point of view, the monetary point of view. That will bring trouble, that will bring problems to us. What the Committee of the Regions is doing right now is exactly stressing the importance of a strong cohesion policy as a base to build upon other ideas, other components of the European Union. But this is not only a case. I would allow me just to clarify something. It's not. I don't want my words to be interpreted as putting the burden of defending cohesion policy only in European institutions, because it starts with us. It starts with regions. and cities. The best way to defend cohesion policy is to use it, and to use it wisely. And again, there is a large margin of progression and improvements in this area. We tend, local and regional, maybe this is too general, but sometimes there is the temptation when we have the ceremony of groundbreaking investment that is funded by European funds, sometimes we tend to forget that part. We tend to forget sometimes to tell people that this is happening because we are part of the European Union and because there is European funds. Sometimes the temptation is too strong to say what goes right comes from us, what goes wrong comes from Brussels. So this is why I say that we are the first ones that are responsible to defend cohesion policy, because the best way to defend it is to use it, and to use it wisely. This being said, and about the importance for the future, we must be aware that there are some things that need to be changed. It's not possible to defend cohesion policy just saying, it's perfect, don't touch it, it's very, very good as it is, you don't need to change anything. No, that's wrong, because there are some areas where cohesion policy can learn from another projects and other ways of working from the European Union. For example, from the RRF. Why not? Why not consider that one of the ways of the future cohesion policy could be to be designed by goals, by objectives. You receive the money if you achieve the goals, if you achieve the objectives. Right now, what we have is, what matters is how much money can you spend. Invest, present the invoice, you receive the funds. But there are some ideas that are core to the contribution that cohesion policy can bring to the overall aspect. A multi-level governance, where you have the participation from regions and cities, not only in implementing, but also in the design of this kind of policy. The Committee of the Regions just presented a report, just in last September, presented a report on the state of regions and cities across Europe. And it is amazing to see the percentage of cities and regions that purely simple say we were not involved in the design of the RRF. Well, multi-level governance, and that's one of the pillars of cohesion policy, must be something that needs to be in the future. A long-term perspective. For example, some people discuss right now, well, you have the energy situation, you have money in cohesion policy that you haven't spent. Why do we have this money here? Why don't we address this money, put it in other mechanisms that could be useful for this situation? So they go and they see cohesion policy as the money pot, where you can take money to address all different situations. Well, the question is not about the money. The question is about the kind of answer you want to give. Because what cohesion policy does, it's to give you a structured, solid, consolidated, long-term investment and long-term answer. That's what you do with cohesion policy. It's not a question about the money. It's about the kind of answer you want to give to the current challenges. If you want to give answers that will put us in a way 20, 30, 40, 50 years in a comfortable situation, well, you have to go by cohesion policy. If not, just take the money and use it to solve the current emergency, and then it's over. But maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, you will be in the same problem or a similar problem again. So, I'm taking too long. So, those, and I'm diversing from the, so those are some of the thoughts and some of the positions that I think need to be addressed and need to be considered in the current situation where we are defining so much. We have momentous challenges, and we are defining answers that will, I don't want to say compromise, but that will frame the way we are and the way the next generations live, the way the European Union will be in the future.
Ya es evidente que la crisis.
It is obvious that the energy crisis is compromising the capacity of the European Union to reach its climate goals. Inflation and high energy prices provoked by the war are not reducing the climate energy we live in. On the contrary, it is expected that the damage caused by events such as floods, forest fires, and extreme heat may reach 175 billion euros a year in the European Union. How do you think in the Committee of Regions that this situation should be addressed by European institutions? Is the Green Deal a burden, or is it an opportunity for the economy of the European Union? Also, the necessary deployment of renewable energies is meeting with difficulties and bottlenecks in the authorization procedures by councils in terms of the permits needed for the installation and connection of photovoltaic and wind farms to the electrical network or the electrical grid. And the same thing could happen with hydrogen. Don't you think the governments, local governments, should be more aware of the importance of granting these licenses in a more agile way so that we can reach energy self-sufficiency?
The answer to the second question also answers to the first one. And Green Deal burden are an opportunity. Well, I think it's a question of survival. It's a question of survival. And that's what my position is, this is the time to move faster in a way to the energy transition. And everybody, it's not a question of governments, national governments or institutions, everybody must be conscious that this is a question of survival. My fellow countryman, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Engineer António Guterres, speaks about a climate carnage. That's what we are living. And we need to act. Of course, there are the challenges of prices of energy, but this is an opportunity, and the certainty of supply. This is an opportunity, of course, where some think, well, maybe we should go slower. Maybe we should take refuge in what we know and what we think it's safer. I think not. I think it's time to move faster in the energy transition. And it's not my position to explain to everybody involved what should be the rulings about authorizations, about that, but take it from the main political goal and the main political objective. We have to move, we have to do more, and we have to move faster. I think that's quite obvious in the current situation.
I'm going to give you some context for this question, just in case you need it. A significant Spanish company, a construction company called Ferrovial, has announced that they're going to leave Spain and they're going to settle in the Netherlands. There is somebody from a Spanish university who's asking you whether you think that moving a company from one country in the European Union to another is a patriotic act.
I should have seen that one coming. Well, let me put it this way. What would be the question if it was the other way around? If you had a Dutch company moving to Spain, would that be the same question? I don't think so. The bottom line is we are living in a context of rules, of possibilities that present serious challenges. And once again, the answer is not isolation. Is not we keep what we have and we don't want any ideas about going further from there, putting it in a mild way. This requires and this demands, especially in the cases where you have news like the one you had that are most, I don't know if I can use the word shocking, I don't think it is, but it draws your attention to these possibilities. Well, but why did it happen? What we can do, because it's not a question of closing or isolating or thinking that it's not, it could be seen, I understand the argument. I understand the question from the national point of view and from the national interest, but it's also to consider that it could happen the other way around. And probably it has in some cases. And probably it has in some cases. You cannot judge the results of policies or what they are able to provide only in this, when you are part of the situation. Does this help? Does this help the bottom line? Was this what you would expect me to say? Probably not. But that's the answer I have for you.
President, do you think that there would be this type of delocation if Europe approved fiscal harmonization?
It would help. I think it would be very, very important. And I think it would help. But once again, the understandable national perspectives sometimes take the lead when addressing this kind of issues.
Mm-hmm.
As a Portuguese citizen, don't you think that, and this is just to change gears, you're a Portuguese person, don't you think that we should promote the northern, or the Galicia, northern Portugal region?
Of course, like in Galicia, but like in so many other regions, it could be a project to not only develop the relationship, to improve, to give concrete meaning, more evidence of the benefits of this relationship, not only in this case, but in other cases across Europe. There are some possibilities of support from the European Union. Yes, there are. You can always wish to have, of course, to have more support in this, in some of these areas and some of these endeavors. But yes, definitely that would be the answer. Yes, it would be useful, and it could be a way to demonstrate with concrete examples and evidence the idea and the benefits from the cooperation at subnational level.
Antonio Fourier asks you, do you think that good understanding between cross-border regions will help countries that do not have a very good relationship with each other to get on better with each other? And then could the isolation of the South, could hydrogen be the way in which Southern Europe might take the lead in the Europe? Because Southern European countries used to be a little bit, perhaps they were less developed than Northern countries, but now with hydrogen, do you think that this can be reversed?
That I think still today need to be tackled in a more concrete process is that one of cooperation between border regions. And it's interesting to see that the importance that cooperation between border regions had in the regional perspective of Europe since its beginnings. It could be a way to demonstrate and to put in evidence what can be achieved, namely in that kind of concern, in that kind of concerns. Yes, definitely. There is a lot of room, there is a lot of space to go in fulfilling this cooperation and putting it in evidence the concrete results that it can bring. And I think that since and once there are more evidence about these concrete results, some of the obstacles can be and should be, shall be removed. The idea of having this kind of cooperation touches the idea of the answer is not isolation. The answer is to go beyond your own community. Either it is at local, at regional, or at national level.
Pedro González de Atalaya.
Pedro González is asking you whether, well, he's saying that some members of the European Committee of Regions aspire to use the committee as a platform for the defense of their independence. Has that trend lessened, or do you think that there's still members that want to pursue independence?
Subnational levels of government. That's the definition. And the Committee of the Regions stays very clearly in a path to demonstrate the importance of subnational levels of government, regions, cities, municipalities across Europe, to the task of building the European project. There is also freedom of opinion and freedom of speech within the Committee of the Regions. But our task, our goal, our objective is very, very clear.
Estoy leyendo el chat.
I'm reading a WhatsApp question. In the Europe of states, regions and states, is there room for small municipalities, which account for 20% of the population, which is where the food that we eat is produced. Those areas have problems with healthcare, education. In the rural areas, there's many problems. Is the European Union going to be capable of reducing this gap and increase population in the rural areas?
The European Union has already done a lot helping national governments, regional governments, and local governments to achieve that kind of connections. That's not only that's a shared response. That's not only a responsibility of the European Union. When you are talking about structural funds, you are talking also about funds that promote and fund this kind of projects. But once again, it's not the responsibility of the European Union to say, this community here should be connected through broadband connection to this community here. That's not the European Union task. That's not the European Union role. It's local, regional, and national government's role. And the European Union, what it says is, to have communities connected is the goal for us. It's important for us. And we are able and willing to fund. Please, come forward and say what you want in what concerns to this. So, I don't know if it's a blunt way to put it, but I think the European Union is doing its part, as I believe that everybody is willing to do their part.
Before I give you, Mr. President, one last turn for your final messages, I would like to give the floor to the representative, to one of the sponsors of our Forum Europa, Mr. Luis Barrero from Assisa Health Insurance Company. And together with Solaria, they make this event possible. Thank you very much, Jose Luis. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here. I'm very thankful to all of you for joining us. I would like to thank Mr. Vasco Cordeiro for his reflections. You obviously have an in-depth knowledge of these subjects. I would also like to thank you for the work you're doing, which is so critical. And as the Minister said, you're trying to find the solutions to our global problems from the subnational level. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best in the future. Thank you, everybody.
Señor Presidente.
Final message I would like to share with you. Well, maybe a one that sometimes it's expressed, but I think it's not, it should be always stressed. What we have discussed here, or debated, or talked about here, sometimes departs from the perspective that there are two different realities. Us, either Portuguese, Portugal, Spain, and there is Europe. They. Well, I have news for you. There are no they. It's our job, and it's our task. It depends on us in this room and outside this room. And what I would like to stress is the urgency I was going to say, to have a citizenship takeover of Europe, but I think that's too strong, maybe. But there is the need for citizens, for people in each one of our communities, to realize that they are the ones in charge. And they are not in charge only when they don't participate, they don't want to be in charge. But it's about people. It's not about institutions, it's not about the Committee of the Regions, it's not about what I said, the local, the subnational, the regional, the state. No, it's about people. And I think there is this urgent need to have this citizenship takeover. We will have a very, very good opportunity in 2024. That's the European elections. But we need to participate, because if not, the European project will not survive. If people are not in charge, interests, legitimate interests, but interests, will be in charge. So this would be my message in the eve of European elections. The need to mobilize people to take over, to participate, to be interested, to audit, to make elected officials accountable for the responsibility of building and promoting this wonderful political idea and project that is the European Union. That's not a responsibility of politicians. That's a responsibility of citizens. So, to conclude, this would be my message. We have enormous tasks ahead. Difficulties, troubles, problems, like the one about moving, but we are much better if we understand that the answer is to cooperate, is to be part of this project and do whatever we can to make it stronger, more efficient, more accurate than any other way. I would like to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I would like to thank you also for taking the time to be here. Committee of the Regions is one of the European institutions. But we are willing to do our part, not only as institution, but also as raising the awareness of citizenship across Europe in each one of our communities to the marvelous endeavor that the European Union is and the responsibility we all have to make it progress, to make it go forward. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.